What's going on, guys? So welcome to, let's call it a little Q&A, right? So the other day I was speaking to a seller and we were going through the whole process of listing the home, what the beginning of it is, going through offers, through showings, through accepted offers, through being under contract, and then just before that we also went over the inspection, right? So when you put an offer in on a house, the first step that I always recommend for my buyers, and even for sellers, just for their peace of mind as well, is to allow the buyer to have an inspection. Granted, there are different times where you might want to forego that. That all depends on your particular situation. It depends on the market, but it's always a good idea. Even if you think that there's a house that's like the house of your dreams, I would recommend having an inspection just to give you as much information about the property as possible and for you to make an educated decision, right? So that means sometimes you have inspections done while you walk through the house the first time. That's a topic for another day. But when it comes to actual inspections, right? There's a question that is asked, and it's mostly asked by it's only asked by the sellers, and that question is, should I be present during an inspection? And when I represent a seller, so as a listing agent, I usually, I can't think of a reason why I would say otherwise, I tell the seller to go somewhere for the time being, right? Let me be there along with the buyers, and if there's buyer representation there as well. So if there's a buyer's agent, I will accompany them, I will walk them through the house, and I will take down any questions that they might have. Now, you might be asking yourself, why shouldn't I be present as a seller? So again, this all depends on your situation, but reason being, and I'll give you an example of something that just happened. So I was working with a buyer, and we had gone through a negotiation process, and we got an accepted offer. So within the next 24 hours, we had an inspector come through the house. Now, the minute we get there, the inspector begins with and this is an engineering inspection, okay? So they're looking at all of the critical components of a house. So you're looking at roofing, you're looking at plumbing, you're looking at electrical, you're looking at very critical parts of the house. They're also commenting on, the exterior, interior features, how to handle certain things as time goes on, what to expect. Same thing with like the boiler and how to take care of it. It's an educational experience for the buyer, and also to make them aware of anything critical that might result in renegotiation or in reconsideration of even having an offer in the first place. So as you go through the home, or as we went through the home, the seller was there along with the other agent, and I was kind of surprised because, like I said, I usually recommend that the seller not be there, right? And this is a perfect example as to why not. So one reason is liability. If an inspector or a buyer asks you a question that is an innocent question, it can become an issue, right? So if they ask you, when did you replace the boiler, or when was the last time that this, or has there ever been a leak, or just any innocent question, and you respond with something, that response is now on record, right? So it comes down to, well, you told me this or you told me that, and there's a liability issue. Another one is, as a seller, you love the house, right? You did all these renovations and you did all this different stuff for your enjoyment of the property. Sometimes people do make renovations just for the sale of the home. That's another topic for another time. But when you're going through and trying to sell the property to these buyers that already made an offer and had an accepted offer, you might say things that turn them off, right? Let's say you said, oh yeah, I installed this water filtration system because the water here is gross, or I did this because of X problem. You start embedding doubts and questions in the mind of the buyer who's already nervous, making one of the biggest, if not the biggest investment of their lives. So you can actually, instead of selling the house, you are turning off your buyer. And guys, I don't know if you've spoken to your agent at this point or you're just curious, but at the point of inspection, this is before a contract is signed. So this is a time where the buyer decides, do I move forward? Am I content with the condition of the home now? Are there certain things, is there a punch list that we're going to make where the seller's going to make changes or fixes that we need or that we're requesting? Do we need to negotiate that? Is the seller willing to make those fixes? Or will, there be a renegotiation of price, right? Which is basically the last resort that you want to do in that situation, especially in today's market. So as we're going through the house and the seller keeps making certain remarks and just tries to sell certain points of the house, they were actually doing the complete opposite. And because I was representing the buyer, I couldn't go and say, hey seller, please stop, right? My sole purpose is to protect my buyers and to hold their best interest in the highest esteem, right? To have that being my major concern. So when the seller's saying these things, and I can tell that my buyers are being turned off, and I can tell that what the seller's saying is not just a little bit of a turnoff, it's kind of a reason for a bit of an alarm or for worry or to question those certain things a little more. So in this particular case, it wasn't a question of liability. It was more of a question of, maybe allowing a buyer to decide whether or not they find these things acceptable and let them make that decision themselves without you trying to oversell something that really didn't have to be sold. And sometimes slipping up and saying certain things that you shouldn't. So for that, you might want to talk to an attorney about what something like that would be. But in this particular case, you hired a representative to sell the house for you. So you got a listing agent. The listing agent's job is to get the home sold and be honest and of course, both sides. So we have a fiduciary responsibility, each side that's representing that particular person. So if you have a listing agent, they're representing your best interests, right? And when you hire a buyer's agent, they're representing the buyer's best interest. So both owe complete honesty to the other party, right? But there are certain strategic things that we're not sharing, right? So in this particular case, the seller overshared, and just based on that and based on the report, the deal fell through, right? There were a lot of things that needed to be remedied, and there was no consensus on that. So if you guys are thinking about selling your home or you're in the middle of selling your home and you're wondering, oh wow, the inspection's here, should I be there? The answer is no. Just from my point of view, from my perspective, stay out of it. Let the professionals handle it. That's why you hired a listing agent, or a buyer's agent. They might have their business partners or their assistants doing it for them, but you as a seller, just stay out. And if you are going to be there, just try to be honest, but don't overshare. Don't have a large conversation. Don't try to sell the home. But overall, I would say as a seller, stay out. Same thing for showings, but we'll talk about that another time. All right. So hopefully this helped. And if you guys have any questions about real estate, large or small, I'm here for you guys. But I know it's a long-winded answer for a short question, but I wanted to illustrate how it could be a problem. And not just liability-wise, like I said before, where something that you say could be held against you in the future, but also you could really just shoot yourself in the foot, right? So that's all I got for you guys right now. And again, hopefully you guys learned something from it. And if you have any questions, DM me. You can comment below, or you could always email me at dgarcia@kw.com or text me at 917-727-7618. And of course, for all things real estate, you can go to SellYourQueensHome.kw.com. All right. Thanks a lot for stopping by, guys. Oh, and follow me on YouTube as well. Just go to YouTube, type in Sell Your Queen's Home, and you'll find me.